welcome to an unboxing and an album design and photography critique of Day6's latest album, The Book of Us Gluon, Even of Day. From my understanding, this album was put together by a subunit made of 3 members, and so today we will be looking through the art direction, photography, graphic design, and all of that stuff in this album. And as always, before we begin, any criticism I give is not a criticism or an attack on the members themselves, as I try to be as constructive as I can. And they are also not the ones that design their album books. So, with that, we can get into it. Here's the cover and the spine, and here's the back. Artwork-wise, I like the artwork. It's a view of the sea, and in the back there's a boat over here. I think it matches the overall theme that they were going for. And I think what really makes this cover cool is the spot UV that they chose to do. And it says, "Nothing can tear us apart." Definitely a very nice detail, and it adds a really cool texture and layer to the cover. As far as the typography goes, I like their serif logo type of Gluon. Very clean. And with that, we can get into it. Alright, so here we have the track list. I did go through all the music, and Day6 is one of the very few groups that I actually do listen to. I like their music a lot. For this album, I didn't necessarily love the music, but I know it's good music. Like, I don't have a favorite song, but I know that all of the songs are very well made, if that makes sense. Like, it's not necessarily my type of music, but I do appreciate the quality of it. And even if I don't love the music, I will say they did an amazing job with curating the whole album. Without fully understanding the language, I was still able to grasp the journey and the thought process through this album. They didn't just slap a bunch of random songs together like I feel like a lot of albums are. There was a whole thought process to the order of the songs and how it shapes as a whole package. So I thought that was really cool and a really high-level execution on the musicians' part. So great job to them. As far as typography goes, I personally, I'm not the best at using serif typefaces, so it's always cool to see examples of good use of that, and I think from a graphic design standpoint, the designer did a pretty good job with that in this album, which we will see as we move on. So the whole creative and art direction here is what I would probably call like old school sailor or explorers kind of thing. If you have a better name for it, let me know. But otherwise, that's what we'll be going for. They did a good job. As far as visuals go, I think it's an A+. Very nice. Execution-wise, I think there's some parts that could have been improved, and we'll get into that later. This book was split into 3 sections, one for each member of this subunit, and I'm assuming most people have seen the book already from other unboxings, so I might not flip through all of the photos. So photography-wise, individually, nothing to complain about. As far as black and white photos go, I can be pretty picky about them sometimes, but in this case, I think they did a good job with creating enough contrast in these to make them exciting. The highlights are really bright compared to the shadows, and that's always a plus. Graphically, they try to keep it clean, and I think adding these lines was a good choice to sort of ground each page. I love the lighting and the colors that they used. Even though it's warm, the shadows and the blue and purple hues of the darker clothes sort of balances it out, so it's not just warm all the way through. And I know each member has like this photo in the dark here. For his, I think it's nice that you can see parts of his face and parts of his clothes, so it's not just the black blob. And throughout the book, they had a lot of these types of images where it sort of sets the theme and the concept for the viewer. So we're going to flip through quickly. Next is Wonpil's section. Again, he has a similar black and white photo as Younghae did. Nice contrast. I like how the mid-tone over here, the jacket, creates like another layer of contrast between the black and the white. And this is probably one of my favorite photos in here. I like their use of these multicolored lights. A lot of time using multicolored lights can come off as like sort of cheap, but I think in this case it works, and whatever they were using for these specks over here on his hair, whether that's lighting or I don't know what that is, but I think that's also a really cool effect. Here we have some black and white photos. I would probably have punched up the contrast a little bit because the tones are becoming a little bit muddy. I probably would have brightened up the highlights in his face just a tad bit more. Here's his silhouette photo. So for him, I think they should have zoomed out a little bit so you can see the background more, because in a lot of like silhouette photos, oftentimes it's not just the shape that the figure is creating, but also like the cool background it's against. So it'd be nice if we can see that more. And similar photos, nice close-ups. I like the photo editing they did for these sets of photos in the warm lighting. And next is the Gluon section. So he also has some black and white photos. This one's nice because the highlights really pop out and his skin really pops out. Love the warm lighting. And this is probably my favorite spread in this book. I like white text on like dark backgrounds. But what's cool about this is it's not like overly dark. You have this photo sort of balancing the spread out with the pink hues and the blues in here. It's a very pretty photo. And here's his silhouette photo where you can see more of his figure and a little bit more of the moon. And so I think for like One Piece they could have zoomed out just a tad bit. His black and white full body photo, I think this one's a little more tricky because he's wearing more black than the other two members, and so there's kind of less contrast in here. But I mean, all in all, I think it's still pretty good. Yeah, and so I think that's most of it. Yeah, nothing to really complain about the individual photos as a whole. Like the lighting in this one is gorgeous, and I like the highlights on their faces. Like whatever the makeup artist did, really did them justice. And I think this photo pretty much sums up the whole theme of this album. I know on the computer this one probably looked perfectly fine, but because printers often print photos darker than they should be, sometimes you have to just compensate for that prior to printing. And what I mean by that is there is actually a figure here. I'm not sure if the camera can pick it up, and you can see a very slight hint of a figure, but to me it's so subtle that it doesn't feel very intentional. I think they should have brightened just those few highlights up just a little more so it feels a little more intentional. Otherwise, for the other two, you can more clearly see the figures. So now moving on to the execution part I was talking about. When I say execution, I really mean more like the whole curation of everything and the strategy behind this. So my issue with with this photo book is I feel like the individuality between each member is a little bit blurred. And that has to do with the fact that they have a bunch of similar photos. You know, there's a formula going on and everyone's following the same formula. You know, even if certain, angles are different, but everyone has a photo like this and it's relatively close up. And everyone has a full body like this. Yeah, and it wouldn't be a big of a deal if there was more variety in camera angles and scale. Scale-wise, it's pretty much the same across all the members. If you look at all the photos from the boat photo shoot, in this photo shoot, the photographer never pulls back farther than a certain point. They're either close-ups like this one, or they show like maybe like half of the body. And it's pretty much the same throughout most of the members when it comes to this particular photo shoot. And the reason being is because this photo shoot set is super small, where they're not able to actually do too much with it. Because it's so small, the photographer can only zoom out to a certain extent. I think this is probably the farthest you see it. All in all, it doesn't go very far, and it's like the same throughout each member, and it's because the set is so small. Normally, when it comes to smaller companies, I understand budget limitations with photo shoot sets. Like, it can be expensive to create multiple photo shoot sets, but with JYP, I do expect a little more since they're enormous and they have a lot of money, and so I feel like they should have invested a little bit more into this photo shoot. Yeah, and I mean, I know that their thought process may have been, since there's only 3 members, they probably didn't want to do anything too crazy with the photo shoot sets if it was only going to be used 3 times. But by that logic, and considering the size of JYP, I would say because you only have 3 members, you should invest a little bit more in each to make them stand out from each other more. So there's a little bit more variation. And I don't even mean designing 3 different sets or making 3 different sets, you know, because that can be a bit much. But they could have added a little bit more to this photo shoot sets to expand on opportunities, so there's more variety between each member. You know, it can be adding more props or just something, or even just making it bigger, so it allows the photographer to take photos in more unique angles for each member. But they didn't really do that here, and you can kind of tell. And again, it's not the members' fault. Photography-wise, each photo I think is really nice, and the members themselves, you know, they're great models. You can tell they're very experienced. So good job to them. I just think as the curation of this as a whole, from their strategy team or who's ever in charge of this stuff, like they could have try to differentiate each member a little bit more with the more unique photo set in each. I personally tend to avoid purchasing albums that follow a very strict formula, and one album would be SF9's 9 Glorious, the second version of that album. It's literally the same photo shoot for every member, and I found that to be very unfortunate, and I felt bad for the members because they all blended in. The angles weren't very unique from each one, the style was pretty much the same, and so I feel like these companies, these creative teams, like they should always keep in mind on how do you make each member stand out, but still sort of making it cohesive. One group that does that really well would be 17. They have 13 members, and but in all their photo books, they somehow are able to make each of their members stand out in their own way, but still make things feel very cohesive. So definitely props to creative teams that are capable of that. Anyway, so that's it for the photo book. Here's the CD. And packaging wise, I actually like Day6's album packaging a lot. There are always these hardcover books, and they're bound very securely. Like, I don't have to be afraid of the pages falling out, and overall to me it's just a very high quality object. So I'm always happy to buy their albums, and despite like my criticism on the execution of certain parts of this book, I still really love this album. For the design and everything, I think the typography is really neat, and the photographs themselves are beautiful, and definitely there still is a lot to learn on my part for this album. So great job to them, and we can move on to the inclusions. So for inclusions, the first inclusion we have is the sticker sheet. I believe these are either song lyrics or song names on here. Next we have the unit photo card. So for the unit card, we have who I believe is Wonpil and Youngtae. And then for the photo card, we have, this is Dawn. And the next photo card is Wonpil. Okay, so those are the photo cards. Very unique shapes. I think they're supposed to go like this. I don't really think this is necessary for a photo card, but it is what it is. Okay, so here we have it, and I left out an inclusion earlier. I totally forgot about it. It's this bookmark over here. So this is the member I have. It's not that I can't name him, I really can't tell who that is because it's so small. But it's a very cute bookmark, and if you lay it on a white surface, I think it's cool that you can see the ocean. It ties with sort of their explorers theme in this concept, so I thought that was really cool. And this is how I would rate this album. Once again, this is just my personal opinion, and it's got nothing to do with the members. It's not a criticism on them. I already mentioned earlier what I think they could have done to make it better. All in all, though, I really like this album. I think music-wise, even if it's not my kind of music, they did an amazing job as far as the journey goes, and I felt like the sound was really unique. Where even if it wasn't my kind of sound, I think it really sets Day6 apart from a lot of other K-pop groups, and so I have a lot of respect for them, and I cannot wait to see or hear more of their music. So, with that, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next video.